On the swing arm here, we don't have any spools, any cotton reels, if you want to call them. Now, I do have a paddock stand, and it has two styles of attachment. The stand has this style of attachment, which hooks in underneath some spools, some cotton reels, and then it has the other style of attachment that just sits underneath the swing arm and lifts it. That right there is a reinforced area. So now, anybody who's got one of these bikes who actually wants to fit some spools to their bike is going to have to drill into their swing arm, get themselves a tap and die set, cross their fingers, and try and get themselves some threads going in order to fit some cotton reels. Yep, that was me talking about fitting some cotton reels, fitting some bobbins, whatever you want to call them, to this bike. Not that you necessarily need them, because you don't. I could live without them, you know, I could carry on as I am. I have the attachments for the paddock stand, you know, I could leave things as they are. It's one of those modifications that I do still want to do, but it's one of those mods that's more would be nice to have. Not essential, but would be nice to have. And that's what I've noticed with most of the modifications that I want to make to this bike, is that they're not essential. They do seem to fit into the category of would be nice to have. A bit like a gear indicator. Yes, it's one of those modifications that I will occasionally mention, and it's one that seems to be wildly debated, with a lot of people saying you don't need a gear indicator. And to those people nowadays, I would probably agree. When I think about where I am in my biking journey, can I tell what gear I'm in on this bike? Yeah, for the most part I can. You know, listen to the engine and consider your speed, and you can pretty much tell what gear you're in. And so I probably don't need that modification now. A learner would, someone getting on a bike for the first time. I'm still a big fan of the idea of gear indicators for learners, but for me it would just be nice to have one. There is a nice gear indicator that you can get that sits up here somewhere on the dash and looks pretty good. I would like to get a clock as well. A clock is, again, not an essential. I've lived without one. You know, I've lived with this bike for 6 years without a clock. It's not essential, but it would be nice to have one. And again, I'd like to get a proper one, something that's wired into the battery, you know, something again that sits up here near these clocks. And on the subject of clocks, I saw a really nice modification online the other day. It seems to be quite an old one, but it also seems to be quite a rare one. Not many people appear to have done this modification, and that was changing the LEDs within the instrument cluster. And this one particular biker had changed the LEDs in his cluster, and he'd changed them to blue. And it just changes what's on your LCD there, and you can change the ones within your tacho there as well. Changes them to blue. But it's not as easy as it sounds. It's with some vehicles, with some cars, bikes, etc., you can just take the LEDs out and replace them. Just change the bulbs, you know. You just pull the bulbs out and put different coloured bulbs in. Only with this instrument cluster, the LEDs are soldered onto the board. So if I did go ahead and do that modification, it looks really nice once it's done, but I certainly don't fancy desoldering and resoldering LEDs that are so tiny and intricate. So if I do go ahead and do that mod, I will probably take the instrument cluster out and take it to some electronics specialist who actually knows what they're doing and isn't gonna cock up my instrument cluster. Staying up in the dashboard area then, I would like to fit some adjustable levers, and I would like to replace this master cylinder. And so to that end, I'm going to do the R6 lever conversion, because it will allow me to pick up both of those modifications. This master cylinder in particular, frankly, I'm tired of painting it. I've changed the diaphragm. It still leaks. No matter what I do to this damn thing, it still leaks, and frankly, I am tired of painting it. On the subject of paint, I would definitely like to get my calipers refurbished and repainted. Although this one is a Brembo and it's a nice colour, and Yamaha did at least make an effort to colour match the rear caliper. You see, this one isn't a Brembo, but they've tried to make it the same colour as the front one, and it's close. You know, it's a close match. And there's nothing wrong with my calipers. It's just there's nothing gold on this bike, and so for me, I just think that they're just the wrong colour. If this bike was the black and gold street triple, then yeah, I'd be all about the gold components. Or if this was my mate's cafe racer, then gold calipers, gold forks, it would make perfect sense, because the gold would fit in with the look of the bike. But this bike's a black and blue sports bike. The gold components, they just don't work for me. So maybe those calipers, maybe they have to go black. And on the subject of black components, these engine covers here, these silver engine covers that don't blend in the slightest. I'm really not sure why they're silver and why they're not black. In fact, they blend in about as well as the silver clip-ons used to blend in. No, these engine covers, they should be a nice shiny gloss black. Continuing with the subject of things that I want to paint, this next one may not even be considered a modification, and that's the wheels. You see, if I was painting the wheels a nice vibrant colour, you know, or even a nice bright white, a blue maybe, or any of these wild and wonderful colours that we see people painting their wheels, then yeah, that probably would be considered a modification. Only, I want to paint these wheels black. But Pete, you do realise that these wheels are already black? Yes, I absolutely do, of course, realise that these wheels are already black, but they're not black enough. Now, the bike is a little bit dirty at the minute because we've been commuting in the rain, and so the wheels could possibly look rather dull. And I don't know how much of this is going to show up on camera, but these wheels are really not that black. Even when they're nice and clean and I've tried to get some polish onto them, there's just no shine to these at all. I think even on camera there, it's kind of starting to show up a little bit. It's like they're 90% black. They're not quite grey, but they're not quite black either, and there's no shine to them. They're kind of like a nothing colour. They're kind of like a somewhere in between a really dark grey and a really shiny black. They're just an okayish black. And so I would really like to get some new Bridgestone tyres for this bike. And so at the same time, I'm thinking, why don't I just send off the wheels, get them refurbished in a nice gloss black, and they can come back lovely powder coated in a lovely gloss black, wearing some nice new Bridgestone tyres. And the last mod, no, almost the last mod, is this exhaust. Yes, it is one of my existing modifications, but the carbon wrap does need to be redone. And whilst I'm at it, this box has 3 or 4 different baffles within it, so I wouldn't mind exploring the difference in sounds that this bike makes by removing 1 or more of those baffles and then rewrapping it so that it looks better than it looks at the moment. And the last modification that I'm now thinking about is actually something that was suggested by one of my viewers. It wasn't something that I'd considered previously, and it's to do with the wastegate. This is apparently a pipe that comes off the exhaust. Now, I have had the exhaust off this bike a couple of times, but I never really gave that pipe much thought. Apparently this pipe, it connects to your airbox somewhere, and anybody who's ever dealt with any EGR valves, which is where part of your exhaust gas is recirculated back through your intake. Anyone who's ever dealt with any of this nonsense will know that it's the devil's own work, and it's bad news. So if we've got a pipe that's connected from the exhaust to the airbox on this bike, that definitely warrants some investigation. And these mods, well, these mods are going to have to be done alongside modifying and working on my Daytona, fixing the water leak on the 306, fixing the head gasket on my 106 Quiksilver. My son's bike needs a service.